evolution of class 12 biology. So today we will study about evolution. What is evolution? It is nothing but the history of life forms, right? So how and when things started and how did they come across various time limits and how did the new things come up. The universe is approximately 20 billion years old and it comprises of huge clusters of galaxies which consist of stars, clouds of gases and dust. Then, so to start with, we have first of all the Big Bang theory, that is the most famous one. Big Bang theory states that there was a huge explosion, okay, and along with that, in the universe, along with that, there was expansion, and with that, the temperature came down. So, as the temperature came down, gases like hydrogen and helium, because of gravitation, they condensed, okay, and then they formed galaxies. So the Earth was formed around 4.5 billion years ago. The number has to be remembered. And initially, surface was covered with water vapor, methane, carbon dioxide, ammonia. Hydrogen escaped being a lighter gas when UV rays of the sun broke water vapor into hydrogen and oxygen. Now, when in ammonia and methane they combined with oxygen, they formed water, carbon dioxide, and gases. And they formed also the ozone layer. Okay. Condensation of the water vapor led to the rain which filled the depression on the Earth's surface, forming water bodies. Then we have got the panspermia theory, which was not very famous, and it was put forth by early Greek thinkers, according to which there were certain units of life called spores or panspermia, from which the panspermia theory comes up. And along with that, from that panspermia came the outer space, and then they become living forms. This was not very famous though. Next came the spontaneous generation, which is very, very important for us. So the first theory which said that life originated from dead and decaying organic matter like mud, straw, etc. But then there was a lot of controversy about this because there was a bifurcation among the scientist groups who believed in this and half of them did not believe. Then we got the life coming from pre-existing life cells, which was put forth by Louis Pasteur. Okay, he said he actually took two flasks. Okay, one of them he sterilized and the other one he didn't sterilize. The sterilized one, no microbe could enter. There was no external source of contamination, so very easily we could understand that there was no growth ultimately. So there was no problem at all. But here he did not sterilize, and what he got was he got life form. Okay, new living forms could easily enter from the killed yeast. Thus, by performing the experiment, he understood that the spontaneous generation was dismissed. Then we got the Oparin-Haldane theory, which is to be studied in details from textbooks. And this theory stated that life originated from pre-existing non-living organic molecules. Okay, these are the biochemicals, proteins, RNA, and all these things are the biochemicals. And the conditions of the Earth were high temperature. That means heat was very much, okay, volcanic storms, reducing atmosphere like methane, ammonia, etc. Then we got the Miller experiment. Urey Miller, okay, what he did in his lab, he created conditions which were similar to that of Earth billions of years ago. Electric discharge and methane, hydrogen, ammonia, water vapor, all these things were used at 800 degrees Celsius. And then what did he observe? He observed amino acid, sugar, nitrogen bases, pigments and fats, which are nothing but our basis of biochemical observations. And this experiment provided evidence for the theory of chemical evolution. Okay, chemical evolution was thought of that time. It showed that non-cellular biomolecules exist in the form of RNA, DNA, proteins, which are nothing but our biochemical properties. And it shows that non-cellular life was created around 3 billion years ago. Then we come to the paleontological evidences. The study of fossils is called paleontology, as we know. Now, fossils are remains of the hard parts of the life forms, okay, found in the rocks. So different fossils in the sedimentary layers. One after the other, because of time, they form sediments, and because of this sedimentation layer, they indicate different geographical or geological periods, and thus its probable age can be predicted if you study the layers. Okay, if you just study the layers, you can understand the age. Now, coming to the comparative anatomy and morphological evidences. So, anatomy and morphology, if you come to that, you can see that in the homologous organs there is same design, homologous, same design and origin, but function is different. Okay, logous, homologous, same design. Example, four limbs of animals like bat, whale. What are they used for? They're used for the same purpose. Okay, cheetah, all these things. Analogous means anatomically they are different, but I mean the way they look, it is different, but functionally they are same. Okay, example, wings of birds, butterflies. Okay, these are analogous. Next, coming to the divergent evolution. Diverge means what? From one same point it is going on diverging to different points. So structures which develop differently due to different needs. Development is only different. Example, vertebrae, hearts or brains in animals. But in convergent one, what happens? Everything comes to the same point. Ultimate meeting point is the same. Due to the same function, different structures. Example, if you see convergent evolution, eyes or say of octopus and mammals and flippers of penguins, all these things, you can see that the function is same but the structure has been evolved differently. So that of course plays a major role. Then coming to the biochemical evidence, where proteins, genes and metabolic processes, they all perform a similar function among diverse organisms and they give clues to a common ancestry. That means when you're going for the molecular evidence and molecular characterization, you're finding that all of them have the same function, but although how much ever different the organisms are, that gives us clue about the common ancestry. That means the starting point is the same and they have actually come from the same point. So biochemically we are getting a reason. During 1850s in England, this is one common observation, that before the industrialization it was observed that white-winged moths are more than the dark-winged ones. Okay, but after industrialization it was seen that more dark-winged moths came in. Why? Because of the observation that predators will spot a moth against a contrasting background. So this sort of survival for the fittest or some that sort of an idea comes into play, proving that due to the soot and smoke the color of the trunk of trees turned darker, and therefore it was easier for a prey to spot white-winged, so the dark-winged ones could survive while the white-wings couldn't. Microbes like bacteria and viruses, they become resistant to antibiotics, okay, and hence it's a stochastic process based on the chance events that whether it will remain or whether it will survive or not. Now all of these, they support the theory of natural selection. As I said, survival of the fittest is the only thing that is being proved again and again. Coming to adaptive radiation, very important one and often asked in questions, like when different species, they start from a common point, okay, in the geographical area, and they go to different areas, to different geographical area. It's an evolutionary process. So in a restricted region, species show unique features, and in a widely separated one, they show common ancestry. So the starting point is the same, but all of them actually go to another area, that is radiation, adaptive radiation. For adapting to the environmental conditions, they're radiating from one place to another. Next, Darwin's finches, a very common and important observation by Darwin. When he was in Galapagos Island, he saw that there were many varieties of finches, okay, small birds in the same island. Then these different varieties, they had evolved from the seed-eating finches. They were actually evolution. So in the given course of time, other beaks also evolved. Some became insectivorous and others became vegetarians. Okay, next was marsupials of Australia. So marsupials are pouch animals. They are seen within the Australian continent. In Australia, they are very common, and all of them have evolved from a common ancestor. Marsupials of Australia. Then placental animals in Australia. So placental animals they have come from the common marsupial ancestor only. From marsupials only, the placental animals have come. Lamarck's theory of evolution. So according to this theory, what happened is evolution of life forms happens because of use and disuse of organs. Use and disuse. The more you use an organ, the more it becomes developed, according to Lamarck. Okay. Example, again there was a lot of controversy about this. Example, initially giraffes did not have long necks. Okay, but to access tall trees, they had to adapt by elongating their necks. And so by passing this acquired character to the next generation, slowly so much they used the neck that it became long, according to Lamarck. Okay, but this theory became obsolete and is no longer accepted. Then coming to Darwin's theory of evolution, very important, very important. The components which form the basis of Darwin's theory, first of all, becomes survival of the fittest. If you prove yourself to be fit, you will survive, otherwise not. Characteristics which enable individuals or populations to survive better in natural conditions will and always will outbreed others. And natural selection, that is naturally you will be selected if you prove yourself to be fit. Individuals or populations which are fit, in the sense reproductively fit in an environment, can be selected by nature, and they only will be surviving more. Why are human beings so much predominant? Because they are naturally fit. Adaptive radiation, as I said already, from one location to another on the basis of various factual observations like limited resources, stable population size, or etc., they can move from one region to the another. That is called adaptive radiation. Now coming to the mutation theory, another very important one which was given by Hugo de Vries, which he was working on evening primrose, okay, when he gave this observation. According to this theory, evolution is caused by certain large changes in his population. say mutation, and not minor ones like Darwin had stated. So mutations cause speciation. Speciation is giving importance to a particular species only, and it's called a single step large mutation or saltation. Mutations are there random, okay, and they don't have any specific reason, and they're directionless. That means they don't have any particular, so there is no reason as to why it happens. There is no direction at all. Moving on to Hardy-Weinberg principle, it's another important one and should be studied with importance. Hardy-Weinberg principle is nothing but saying that allele frequencies in a population, they are always stable. Allele frequency in the sense P and Q will always be stable, and this is constant from generation to generation, which is called the genetic equilibrium. The maintenance of stable conditions in a particular generation from one generation to the other is called genetic equilibrium. Now sum total of all the allelic frequencies is 1. Like in fractions, we always consider that 1 is a total fraction, like that. Individual frequencies, for example, you can name them as P, Q, etc. And in genetic studies, it is very important. Diploid P and Q represents the frequency of allele capital A and allele small a respectively. So the frequency of AA, that is capital AA individuals, is simply P squared, and the equation which states the equilibrium is P squared plus 2PQ plus Q squared is equal to 1. This is the most commonly used equation. This is the binomial expansion of P plus Q whole square. And when frequencies are measured, when you measure the frequencies, it differs from the expected values, okay, and this difference is nothing but the extent of the evolutionary change. Distance in genetic equilibrium or Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, that is the change of frequency of alleles in a population, would be interpreted as resulting in evolution. Now there are various factors which affect this Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, okay. First of all, gene migration or gene flow, then genetic drift, then the mutation, genetic recombination, natural selection, as I already said, which leads to stabilization and directional change and disruption. Now the original drifted population becomes founders, and the effect is called the founder effect. Evolution of plants and animals. Talking about plants and animals, see, plants invaded earth before animals, okay. Plants are much more complicated and systematized as compared to animals, okay. As and when you study more in details, you will understand. It appears opposite. Bryophytes were the first plants who have originated, followed by the pteridophytes and gymnosperms. So bryophytes first, pteridophytes second, and gymnosperms third. First vascular plants originated in the Silurian period. Around say 500 million years ago, invertebrates originated, and around 350 million years ago, jawless fish, amphibians fish with stout and strong fins originated. So around 200 million years ago, reptiles originated. Dinosaurs disappeared around 65 million years ago, and first mammals occurred in the Jurassic area, and they were like shrews. Evolution of man. So one after the other, like what are the names of the man who evolved? First was the Dryopithecus. The time of origin was 25 million years ago, who walked like almost gorilla and the chimpanzees, and they ate soft fruits and leaves. Next became Ramapithecus. Ramapithecus was around say 15 million years ago, had teeth like modern man. And third is the Australopithecus. That is time of origin was around 2 million years ago, who ate fruits, hunted with stone weapons. Slowly evolution, you see, Dryopithecus, Ramapithecus, Australopithecus, and then we have the Homo habilis, who like time of origin was same around say 2 million years ago only. First human-like, did not eat meat. First human-like, okay, that's why Homo habilis. Did not eat meat. Brain capacity, please be very sure about the brain capacity, 650 to 800 cc. Fossils found in East Africa. Then we had Homo erectus. Time of origin was 1.5 million years ago. Brain capacity is more. Slowly you see brain capacity is increasing, 900 cc. Fossils found in Java, and they did eat meat. Then came Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, which time of origin was 1 lakh to 40,000 years ago. Brain size, see, even more, 1400 cc, whose fossils are found in East and Central Asia, used hides to protect their body and buried their dead beings. And these are the ones. Homo sapiens neanderthalensis are important because they are also called Neanderthal man, and they were the, just before Homo sapiens, they were the ones, okay. And Homo sapiens, please remember the order in which they are produced. Time of origin is 75,000 to 10,000 years ago, and started human cavulations, and they started agriculture also, okay. They are the modern man, so they are the most say modern ones. Let me also take a moment to introduce you to Michelet. It is an online tutoring and mentoring service which connects you to tier 1 college students of IITs, NITs, AIMS, etc., from which you can ask any kind of doubts which you may have with regards to your competitive or board examinations. Their fees start from a menial ₹1,000 per subject per month, where you get the said services along with AI-based feedback as well. You can reach out to them at contact@missionaid.in for any queries. That marks the end of our session. Hope that was good. Make sure that you like the video and subscribe to our channel for further updates. Thank you.